All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about a particular topic, and that topic is perception. And I guess perception can be defined is a definition for the word perception, but what I think typically what people understand perception to be is a viewpoint, right? A viewpoint of things. But I don't think that many people really understand or try to pinpoint what how perception is perceived, or how one can have a perception. And it makes me think about a lot of things that I like to research and look through. And one of the most common things you hear from different speakers or people who have an insight into somewhat of sociology or the physiology or psychology of how human beings operate and move about in a world. And one of the most common things was how you are brought up, what things you have been exposed to, and what you've been taught. And I was watching a video a few days ago, and it was someone speaking to someone and just telling them about the idea and the conception of hate, and how even myself many times have spoken to people and had this same view that hate isn't something that human beings are born with, right? It's something that's taught to people. No one is born hating. A child, when it's born, it doesn't care or even consider what a person looks like, right? That's not a concern for them, because they don't understand or have a self-identified perception of what the color of someone's skin is, or even the difference between someone being tall and height. They have none, right? So all of these things are developed over time in the course of in the span of one's life. So it's so important to understand that, and it's important because one of the crippling things that we are dealing with as a collective consciousness is the inability to perceive not just ourselves but others, and try to be more open to how we perceive the world around us, and not just this self-identifiable perception of ourselves. It's important to observe that, but it's also important to observe things outside around you, and how you interact with those things and appreciate those interactions. But the most important thing is to understand that our perceptions is not our own, and it has never been our own. If you sit back and you just observe the world, because I think that's an important piece. I don't think many of us just take the time to sit back and just observe the world around us. You will begin to see just how controlled our perceptions of the world around us is, and how we view and see the world. And it has been over the last few years that I myself have changed some of my own perceptions of the world and how I interact with it. I've had a more masculine, and I may be wrong on which side, each side of this works on the brain, but if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But On the left side, I'm a more masculine man, so I operate from that side. But I had to learn that both sides of the brains need to be in balance, need to be in sync and harmony with one and each other. So I had to start thinking less masculine and more feminine. And once I really got the balance, I began to understand, and even my opinion or my feelings towards people who felt certain ways about things, it changed. Now there are certain, I guess I'll say, groups of people that I still have a problem with their viewpoints, not because I have a problem with their having their own opinions. I just have an issue with the toxicity that exists behind some of these groups. But I do believe that they have a right to those views, and no one should take away those views. So to really begin to understand someone else's experience, you have to observe with an open mind, and an open heart, because not everyone has the same experiences and not everyone goes through the same experiences. Our world is just filled with so many different people that express themselves in so many different ways, whether they do it through certain dance or certain practices, certain cultures, certain religious beliefs, certain aspects of life. And those aspects and those different views is what makes the world such an amazing place, because you can go to another part of the world and have a completely different lifestyle than you had in your previous one, just because the way the way things are done in this side of the world is foreign to how you operate and what you're accustomed to. Even within some of our own countries, you can go to one state and go to another state, and the experience is completely different. You know, the atmosphere is different. So those experiences is what you get to, you begin to understand, and you learn to appreciate those differences that we all share. But the only way to accomplish something like that is to first observe the world through your own eyes, not through the eyes of your mother, not through the eyes of your sister, not through the eyes of your friend, but through your own eyes. And in order to have those experiences, you have to be able to be somewhat vulnerable and allow yourself to experience and observe the different beliefs, the different types of lifestyles, you know, the different belief systems, because then you will be able to get a true understanding of what's going on around you. Currently today, that doesn't happen. Every aspect of our life has some form of control, and that control is responsible for shaping the perceptions we have. Our life experience define and then become the person that we are. But the reality is that is not the person you are. That is a version of the person you have become because of the perceptions, the life that you lived. If we all really took a step back and said, okay, why do I feel this way? Now, do I feel this way about this particular topic because I generally feel this way about it? Or do I feel this way because for the last 20 years, I've been told by a loved one, a parent, or, you know, a group that this is how you should feel about this particular thing. And to go against that is wrong. Because then you will begin to start thinking and analyzing what your emotions and how you feel about something. right? You can say, well, I feel this way about the comment someone made because I've experienced that myself. And although you have experienced that, that does not mean that that experience is true for everyone. There are many others that probably share the same experiences, and one might call those your community, your tribe, your community. But whatever you call it, there are those who have similar experiences, and those people would understand. But they also understand that there are other people who have not experienced that. We all don't grow up in the same communities. We all don't have the same upbringing. We all don't have the same opportunities, right? Whether we wanted to agree or disagree, that's the reality. And I think for the majority, the world around us, we understand that there are certain groups that have more, other groups have less, right? The rich, poor, right? Men, women, right? There is always these discussions around how different we are, but we never actually took the time to sit down and say, what is some of the things we share in common? Sometimes a man and a woman might be able to sit down and have the same absolute experience and not realize it, but because of some difference, because one is a man and one is a female, they immediately pull away from it. Conversations is part of that observation. It's part of the experience that will help you to fully understand and mold and make sense of what is actually going on around you. There are so many people who benefit from the conflict that is created from all these different beliefs and groups and ideas and life experiences. There are so many contrasts to these things that people just immerse themselves in the differences to the point where it becomes toxic, and it's everywhere, and it's been planted like a seed in us. We don't sit and say, I don't necessarily feel the way you do, but I understand why you would feel that way. And although even if I don't understand it, I respect that. We don't do that because we feel that because our perception of it is the truth, and one may say reality. It is my reality, that whatever my reality is, that reality exists for everyone. It does not. That's just not true, because we all don't live the same life. We have individual lives with individual experiences, which means our individual observations should be different. But when someone can control your perception of the world, then, well, that's how you can create different groups, because I can create this group, and then I can create this group, and then have many separate themselves in those two groups. And then I don't have to stop there. Within those groups, I can create subgroups, and then I can create more subgroups, and then I can create more subgroups. And before you know it, you have so many groups that you just have a bunch of different groups, going back and forth with each other about what is true, what is false, what is right, what is wrong, who's this and who's that. And at the end of the day, one of the greatest gifts we have is the ability to decide the fate for ourselves, to decide what life we choose to live, and the choices that we want to make. You should not be defined by what someone says you should be defined as. You should not be defined by what someone says you are. You should just be what you are and who you are without restrictions. But that's not the world we live in, because those control perceptions. And I use the example as someone who is in a same-sex relationship, someone who is grown up in a devoted Christian belief will say that is an abomination. You shouldn't do that, and it's wrong. And oddly enough, someone will say, well, why? Well, because God said so. God is the voice and the final word for all. And whatever God says is true. But I have an issue with that. Because when you read passages in the Bible, a lot of times you'll find that they make reference to God being very merciful and understanding and loving. And if all of those things are true, why would the creature that the God himself itself has created would be turned off or disgusted by the lifestyle this being has chosen? If God is loving, all knowing, then God already knew what I was going to be before I was even created. Because God is all knowing, all seeing. But we were also taught by Jesus as an example that we should all love one another and we should all treat one another with respect. When they were stoning the horror when it was Lady Magdalene, when they were, stoning her, Jesus stopped in and stopped. Said, don't do that. And said, who is he with? He who is without sin cast the first stone. And no one could throw the stone because we have all done some things in our life that may not necessarily be something we'll be proud of, but we should not let those things interfere with our connections with each other and our relationships with each other. I don't have to be okay with your lifestyle, but I can respect you and love you just the same. I don't have to be engaged in your lifestyle. I don't have to observe your lifestyle. I could prefer not to, but it's my choice. And, as a heterosexual man, that's not my thing. But if someone did have that lifestyle, that person would not be someone I would not want to be around or turn away from. I would be the same way I was with that person if I was with someone who wasn't, because it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. As long as this person is trying not to enforce their lifestyle on me, I don't really care, because as far as I'm concerned, they have the right to live the life that they live. And if what they're doing is wrong, then they'll be judged for it. It's not my place to judge. But we have put ourselves in a position to judge others for the decisions that they make, for the choices that they make. And here's the important part. Not because we ourselves have came up with that and we've formalized this feeling that this is wrong and you're bad. And no, it was because it was told to you that it was bad without any evidence to the contrary. There is nothing other than a book that is stating that this is wrong, right? And books are books. Books are written by people. So we can say, well, there's been, it came from God who told his disciple to write this. I'm like, okay, fine. Well, I'm familiar with many people, and specifically in different religious belief systems, that think Mormons are insane because of what they believe, the story that they believe. But oddly enough, it sounds very similar to all the other ones. You had God speak to this prophet And this prophet wrote what God said to it. I mean, the fact that we will sit and point and pick and attack other people's beliefs is it's a symptom of that control. It's a symptom. The controlling mechanism that's in place to control your perception of these things is the problem. And really, the solution to that is for you to be open. I don't know how many people sit down and have conversations with someone who has a different belief system, and not to jab at their belief system, but to understand why is it they believe that system. Some people feel so strongly about their beliefs that they are willing to criticize yours. That causes confliction. That causes great conflict. The reality is, your belief and his belief, or her belief and their belief, it doesn't matter. It is what you believe. If I believe that I am a Titan and I can change my size at will, well, why is that a problem? If I believe that, extraterrestrials are real, or the devil is living inside me, why is that a problem? Now, granted, if you're saying the devil lives inside of you, maybe you should talk to somebody. But oddly enough, that shouldn't be. We shouldn't discredit that isn't true, because we don't know if it's true. No one on this planet has actually seen the face of God. We have experienced God. We have observed God. How do we observe God? By what we feel. We observe God by what we feel, the feelings we have gotten, the things that have happened in our lives. And to that credit, someone can discredit that belief and said, well, maybe it was just you, or maybe it was just coincidence. How do you know for sure it was God? Oh, well, I prayed to God. Well, maybe it was a coincidence that when you prayed to God, it happened. Right? We spend so much time trying to debate each other about our beliefs, what we have observed outside of those controls, but what we observe in ourselves. I personally appreciate someone who has a completely different belief than all the other beliefs out there, because that means this person has done enough of their own research, their own self-perception, to come to the conclusion that this is the belief that they deep down believe to be true. And I would never claim to know anything, and I don't know what belief system is right or wrong. But I will say this: I think all the belief systems are neither wrong or right. Because I think each of these pieces of each belief is right. And if we took those beliefs and put them together like a puzzle, we will find the true truth about our existence, why we're here, what we really are meant to be and to do. But in order for us to even get to that point and get over this hurdle, we have to come together and be able to sit and talk to each other, because the perceptions that we have, they are not our own. They are not our own. From your time of your birth, you have been given these perceptions. You are being given the perception from your parents. Then you got these perceptions while you were in school. Then you got your perceptions when you got around your peers. When you moved out into the world, those perceptions begin to develop. I don't see, I remember growing up in the church, I've always been a very inquisitive person. I've always wanted to know one thing, the truth. Above all, I only care about the truth. I don't care about anything else but the truth. And I find because I want the truth, I've been able to take a piece of every belief system that exists and put the puzzle together and realize that all of them are right, but they're right for the wrong reasons. Right? The idea that the stories we read from all of our spiritual and biblical texts, it all stems from one story and one source. But the pieces, some have been excluded, some have not been included, some have just not been fully understood. And because of that, we're getting bits and pieces of the story. And what happens is we're now left to create these different stories of our own, which would be great if we were doing it on our own, but we're not. Some system, some organization, whatever you want to call it, has decided that this was the narrative if you want to believe this, and this is the narrative if you want to believe this. That to me is the greatest problem. Because if there's evidence that can confirm all these things, even if I search this on my own, then it's hard for me to dispute it to be the truth. And it's not that, oh, you're wrong because I'm telling you this. No, that just means, hey, you know what? You're right, but there's also another piece to it that you're probably not thinking about, or you haven't researched, or you haven't noticed because it's not readily available to everyone. I think that our perception of the world is a lie. I think what we perceive in front of us is not true. And it's not true because everything we have been digesting in the in the time that we've been on this planet, at some point, something was changed. Something was changed. Mostly what was changed was the narratives. They were changed because in order to control a large population, I need that population to believe what I am telling that population to believe. And if I can convince an entire world what is true and what isn't true, then I will have complete dominance over every aspect of every being on the planet's life. Quite easily. So easy so that most won't even recognize the issue. I was thinking about this the other day. When you work and you get your paycheck and you look down on your paycheck and you see all these taxes were removed from your paycheck before you can even get it. Someone has already went into your check and just took away all your money. Now, I don't recall, other than, when you're filling out your documents, there was no additional document that asked me, is it okay if we take this money directly from your check? Right? When you fill out your forms, when you first get onboarded to your job, you're filling out your paperwork, and in your paperwork, you're saying I'm going to have these dependents, and if you need to be exempt, you're going to have these many exempts. But you never actually filed or signed any document stating that it was okay for the state or the federal to take your wages prior. And I thought about that. I was like, I don't. As I started to think about it, I'm like, kind of seemed like some form of extortion or theft, right? I mean, if you try to think about it differently, right? You have someone who walks inside your house, opens the door, grabs something up and takes it and walk it out. You're gonna be like, hey, what the hell are you doing? Why? What are you stealing my things for? Then we're like, oh, this is part of you being in this town. So, you know, every month we just come in and grab a few things. You go, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't care who you are or what this is, but you can't just walk inside my house and take something that belongs to me. You've spent 2 weeks working to accumulate that money so that you can take care of your family, and someone decides they want to take it before you can even touch the actual physical money. That to me seems kind of strange, right? And then aside of that, there is all these stipulations on what you can do, how you can do it. And we don't realize that so much of our life is in this controlling state. And I won't say that there aren't certain rules that should be in place to ensure that everyone conducts themselves as loving and caring human beings, right? There are so many different civilizations, ancient civilizations, that had not what they called necessarily commandments, but rules on how to be a loving, or a kind, or just to be a human being to one another. Not enforcements, not commandments, but rules to follow. And of course, there was always going to be some type of repercussion if certain rules were violated. But for the majority, the basis of the rules wasn't for punishment. It was never designed just so that you can punish someone, but it was designed so that everyone understood that it is better for us to work with each other and live in harmony than to live in chaos. And if we don't realize that we live today in chaos, then we're lost. Because for the simple fact that we have this perception that I am right and you're wrong, you're evil and I'm good, those beliefs have created this. It has created chaos. Because if we just love and respect one another and appreciate one another as just being human beings, or just being even different and appreciating our differences, then it wouldn't be chaotic. It wouldn't be. I watch so many times people who would post things up, or people would speak to the fact that, you let so-and-so touch your hair. And I'm specifically talking about a black or an African person versus someone who isn't. Because African people typically have very wool hair. And, people who aren't of African descent or doesn't have this wool hair, they typically find it fascinating and they want to touch it. And the first thing people say is, I am not an animal, don't pet me. Now, I never took it that way. What I took it as was someone being mesmerized by a feature that them themselves have never seen, because they don't have it and no one around them has that feature. So it's like the same thing if you've seen a bear or a lion, you want to pet it. Probably not the smartest thing to do, but you want to. Why? Because you don't experience it. You've never seen it except for on maybe television. So you like, wow, is this way? And part of that is because we've isolated ourselves and we separated ourselves so much. And that's not untypical, right? Even in the times of our ancestors when they lived in tribes, there were so many different tribes. Not all the tribes interacted with each other. So you may not be able to see a certain person the way they looked and their garments and the different artifacts they wore because you weren't part of that tribe. So that's fine. But the beauty is, if you did interact with them, you got to learn more about the culture. You got to learn more about them and experience them, right? So it's not about we've because again, a system of control has created this separation between us. And if you're someone who truly believes in the Creator, then you have to understand that we are all one from the Creator. The Bible tells you God made you in His own image. That's self-explanatory. Because if God made us all in His image, we are all an image of God. We're not separate, but we let these things separate us. We let these things define our perception of the things around us. And it prevents us from being open to the idea that someone has a different belief or view of the world than you do. You will find that sometimes if you allow yourself to be open, you'll find that you might actually start to understand a different point of view. And maybe you may even find some answers to the questions you've asked yourself about your own belief, right? It's just a matter of perception. And that starts by eliminating the perceptions that they placed on us. All these beliefs and things were just designed to separate us, to turn us against each other, to say that I am better because I am straight and you're not because you're gay. Or I am better because you're a black and I'm better because I'm white. Or I'm better because I'm Asian. Or I'm better because I'm tall. Or I'm better because I'm short. Or I'm better because I am smarter than you. These things are no more than control mechanisms to keep us separated. So you have to ask yourself, why? Right? You say, okay, well, mister, you're saying all that. Well, why would someone want to separate? That doesn't make any sense. Well, it does if you want to keep people in control. There is no way to control if every human being is on one accord. And if we saw our governments, if we saw our leaders doing things that we thought was inherent, it just borderline criminal, we would all stand up in one voice and state, this is not acceptable and we're not going to allow it. Being apprehensible with the things that you are doing, we will not tolerate, and you will change it immediately, or we will do this as one. We would keep these bad actors, we would keep them in check, and we would keep them honest, because we're all speaking with one voice. So if you separate us and scatter us and put us in multiple groups and groups of groups and groups of groups, there's no one voice. There's multiple voices. And they're just ignoring all those voices. Why? Because the voices are fighting amongst each other. You're too busy fighting with each other the structure of this control, the design of this control is to create that perception that you are different and better than this group that is different and better. Both you groups are being told that you're different and better because of this reason, when it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, if your perception is changed about the world, you will begin to see the outliners in everything. You'll start to be able to see the holes that you didn't notice before, the missing parts that you're like, well, why isn't that there? And it will happen the moment you start having your own perception of the world and not the perception that you've been told to have. Eliminate the control of what religion is good or bad. Change the perception of a person who decides to have a different lifestyle. Change the perception of someone being better because of you make more money than them. Understand that these are all divisional controls, divisional aspects that will only sink us deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into despair. As we are now dealing with not just a global pandemic that isolated us in our homes away from our families for 1 year, and which we are still dealing with today, we also now are struggling with an economic issue that is now causing mass inflation, which is affecting so many different aspects of our lives. The gas, the foods and services, right? These things are increasing and it's causing great impact to us. And aside from that, because of the pandemic and its effect on the world and how it's affecting inflation, aside from the people who were affected prior to the pandemic, millions of people have lost their jobs. Yes, some were able to get back into the office, but some are also back out looking for work because another group of people were let go. So now they don't have any employment. Excuse me. And now we're dealing with inflation. I read an article by the Fed, Jerome Powell, who stated that they're not necessarily instructing companies, but they are recommending that companies stop hiring because the hiring itself is increasing or adding to the inflation. Well, that is affecting the people who are not able to work, which means if they don't work, they can't buy food. If they can't buy food, their family starve, and if they don't have a roof over there, they end up out in the street. So, is that the answer? Is the answer telling people not to go to work? I don't know, but I don't think so. But that's just a tip of the problem. The biggest problem is the fact that we have not been taught how to take care of ourselves and sustain our families in the event that our governments aren't in a position to do so. I remember when I went to school, having home ec and shop class. And if you are anyone born in the 2000s, specifically, you have no idea what I'm talking about because by the time you got into school, it was already removed. It was gone. But for those who went to school prior to that, you remember going to home ec in art class, right? Most of the times, the men went to to shop class, and the women went to home ec class. Yeah, I argue that was kind of chauvinistic. I mean, what if I wanted to bake, right? But that's what it was, right? But that was a skill, a life skill that would be useful in the event that you needed to, for a man, build something. Or for a woman to make you more, which at the time is what it was designed for, to make women more desirable, because at the time women were working, at home, raising a family. It benefited women to cook, learn how to cook, because one day they wanted to go out, find them, a man with a wealthy man or a man with a good job, so that they can raise and take care of their family. Well, that changed, and I don't know if it changed because more women started to flood into the working force, so there were less importance on women staying home and cooking because they were now joining the workforce. But I still think that was still an important life skill that regardless if you're a man or woman, you could learn, even in shop. I don't think men should just be restricted to being the only ones that can fix and build. We have women who can build, buildings, right, today. So it was important for these skill sets to be in. And I would also include that, why aren't we being taught agriculture? Why don't we have an understanding of agriculture? How do we not know that how to plant and grow our own fruits and our own vegetables? Why? Ask yourself, why would they not teach this in class? Right? Why is it that we don't have the ability to understand finance? Why is it that we don't know how to structure our finances? And if we are teaching that in school, why isn't everyone learning that tool? Why is it that you have to wait until you get into college, which is also an institution which you need to pay in order to go to? We all know that not everyone can afford to go to an institution, right? It becomes very difficult. And if you sit in a certain tax bracket, your parents does, then that even limits you, right? If you make too much but not little enough, then you don't get any financial help, and then you end up in debt. The system is so broken, and we just have to accept the same process because we refuse to step back and come up with our own perception. There is something wrong with the fact that we don't have access to the information to allow ourselves to be self-sustainable. It's a perception. The perception is you don't have the ability to take care of yourself, so we will take care of you. And we know what's best for you. Well, let me decide if that. Give me the choice to decide what's best for me. So the perception that you've been taught is that if you do this way, it's easier for you. This is for you. But what we don't realize is, if for whatever reason, make no mistake, countless civilizations have rised and they have fallen. That is without a fact. If you've ever picked up a book in school, you would have seen examples of that. Rome, Greece, Ottoman Empire, these great civilizations, the Mayans, the Aztecs, they have all fallen. If this great civilization we have today falls, and you are forced and you are left with no out, no way to feed, no way to maintain your house, what happens? And that is simply because of the perception that they have to keep feeding us. Making life easier does not make life better. I would argue to make things more complicated, because now I can't do any of these things on my own. Any event, you can't sustain yourself for whatever reason, meaning the government or your local or your state governments, whatever those governments are. But we have to change the perception. We have to understand that what someone is saying is the best for you, it may not be the best for you. I remember growing up and being told, well, you gotta go to school, you got to do good grades, you gotta graduate from college, and you gotta get yourself a good job. That's the only way for you to be successful in this world. And then you hear stories about people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, who literally didn't finish college. And we all see these guys are billionaires. One of them practically runs the world without finishing college, because they had a dream, they had a goal, and they decided that they didn't need it. If what they've told us was true, then how is it that these guys are successful? How is it that they were extremely successful, more successful than the person who actually went to college for 4 years and got a degree? How is that? It's just a perception. One, oddly enough, that you've been taught to and spoon-fed for your entire life. But the reality is different than the perception. And that's what we have to understand. The perception is different than the reality. And in order for us to get the truth, we need to first change our perception. We need to see the world from a different lens, and not a lens that someone has told us to look through. Look at the world through your own lens. Experience the world through your own eyes. Because I promise you, I guarantee you, when you do, you're going to be asking yourself, what have I been doing with my life this entire time? And how did I not see this? And if you're one of those people who have, and you're just ignorant, and you feel like you don't want to leave you don't want to lose the comfortability that you have, look at the world today. Look at the world today. Up at the time of recording this, the stock market had just started making a bounce off the low from the previous week. And this is one of the biggest crashes from many of the economists, many of the institutional hedge funds, a lot of the CEOs of these different banks and stuff, that all had kind of the same tone, that this was the biggest pullback or drop in the indexes that they've ever seen, including 1940. 1939 was the biggest one up until recently. This was bigger than that. And that was a big crash, right? So we are in a unprecedented territory right now. The world has never experienced this kind of disruption to the world. We don't know what's going to happen next. It's unprecedented. So we don't know how to prepare. Our governments don't know how to prepare, right? So what do you think happens if you don't take a bird's eye view of your own observation of the world? You're going to get caught off guard. And when you get caught off guard and you're not prepared, well, whose fault is that? Of course, these are just my own thoughts that I've documented to see my growth and my change, but it's also for anyone who stumbled across this video to get you to start perceiving the world different. Because I promise you, the universe, the source, the creator, the one above all, with God, whatever you decide to call this being, speaks to us. But we're so distracted that we can't hear. We can't hear it. I implore you, take some time and sit back and just really listen. Ask a question and then listen to everything around you. Not just some arbitrary thing like a sound. No, it doesn't have to be arbitrary. It could be anything. It can be a conversation in the street, a song you hear in the radio all of a sudden, or just a person on a video that you were looking at on YouTube. Because God will speak to you in so many different ways. And that is the voice you should listen to. And there's one other voice, the true you. the spiritual you, that part that rests in you. This flesh is just a vessel for you to navigate this realm. But the true you is nothing but spiritual light. And that being is always whispering. Listen to it. Don't question it. Listen to it. I'll tell you, question everything that comes out of yourself. Anything that is not within, you question it. Because the true within you, the true you, won't steer you right. It will steer you down the right path. It won't steer you wrong. But things that exist outside of you, it may have a agenda, right? It may have its own purpose, and it benefits from you in that purpose. So really begin to look internally, change your perception, and whatever biases that you have, put them to the side. Put them to the side. And just think about how you are responding. And if you were Jesus, if Jesus was standing next to you and sitting next to you, do you think Jesus would be okay with that? Do you think whatever deities or prophets that you believe in and you follow, if they were sitting next to you, would they be okay with that? And if they are, well, I might suggest you look at it. You look at a different prophet, or just don't even bother, right? But more importantly, look at yourself. Look internally. See, and truly take a deep look inside, because you might find that the perception you have might change if you just open your mind and open your heart. Because one thing we all can agree on, no matter what your race is, what your nationality is, what your belief is, or what your sexual orientation, we all want to be happy. We want to have a full life, and we want to live by our own beliefs and our own structures, and not defined by someone else's beliefs. And I don't know if any of this is right, but what I do know is this: if we've been given free will, then we should use it. Unless free will doesn't exist. Because I have not seen in the world the true form, that true form of will, free will. I just haven't seen it. I've experienced it in my own, but I listen to so many debates and arguments about different topics so much, I can't think of, I don't see that. Because if my experience differs from your experience, then I must be crazy. I must be wrong. And you must be right. I'd say this: I believe what I believe. I am who I am, and I will be what I have always been, and nothing more. And for you who are listening, if there's anyone listening, be who you are, as long as you being you does not cause harm to another. And if you have an opinion, you should voice it, and no one should silence your voice. Even today in this world, it's so sickening to see how cancel, as they call it, culture has been running rampant in this world. I don't understand that. I mean, what happened to the what happened to the First Amendment, the freedom of speech? I've watched so many videos in my time where, regardless of what the group is, it doesn't matter. It could be, some Black Lives Matter type group, or the KKK, or a white nationalist group. So many of these groups, whenever they want to voice their belief and their perception, they're attacked. I have no problem with peaceful demonstration. I have no peaceful voice of belief. I don't care. And I am a melanated person. And if you don't know what melanated means, I am a dark-skinned person. I really don't give a shit if someone hates me, they don't like me. It doesn't matter, because that person doesn't even know me. They're solely making their perception on me based on whatever was taught to them. So why would I be concerned if someone wants to voice those things? First of all, the things that they may be saying may not even be true. It may be their own perception, because that's what they were told, right? I don't know, and I don't really care, but I will fight, and I will fight their right to say it. Doesn't matter what it is. I don't have a problem with anyone's voicing their own beliefs. It is their right. That's why we have the First Amendment. The moment you start taking people's right to freedom of speech, we start looking like China and the other countries that this country says they hate. That's crazy. Everyone should have the right to express themselves in any way, as long as it doesn't cause harm. The moment you become harmful, the moment you incite violence onto others, that's when that person or that group is a problem and they need to be dealt with. But other than that, they have their right to spew whatever quote unquote hate they please to. You hate gay women? Cool. You hate black people because they smell and look like monkeys? Cool. I'm okay with that. You don't like women because they got small brains? Hey. You don't like men because men are too destroying. They don't know how to respect women. You say all men? Cool. You include me in it? That's fine, no problem. That is your right and your belief. But I will say this. Have you sat down and spoken to me? Have you sat down and just went through, had a conversation so I can share you my experience, my life, so that you can get so you can get some kind of insight into my life and how I was brought up and why I believe what I believe, or why I have the lifestyle I have? Because I would challenge you to do that. I will challenge you to do that, because you may realize maybe what I believed was not necessarily the truth. And that's all I want for every human being on this planet. Create a perception that you control. And you control that by creating that experience yourself and not being told about an experience or being told what is what. Being told what is the true this and what is the true that. But to formulate that belief your own by observing the world around you. Not just reading a book and taking it for face value, but reading the book as a starting point and then observing the world around you, because the world will speak back to you. The planet will speak back to you. So I want to leave you with this. Our perceptions and how we view the world, it is not our own. I implore you, I beg you, Take the time out. Do it your own. Look for those beliefs, but look for this perception on your own. Don't let someone tell you or define it. I don't care who they are to you. Define that on your own. And I would tell you this: the world will seem so much different, and you will understand why I feel the way I feel. Take care.